In today's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, get off my lawn.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Sean Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and I've got a topic for you today about how to get someone off the title to your house, possibly. Before I get there, I did want to give you a quick update on what's going on here with Yesner Law over the coming months. Now, I'm recording this in September of 2021, and a lot of this stuff is happening October and November of 2021. If you are listening to this episode after October or November of 2021, I believe all of these events will continue into the future. So either check back with me or double check, the websites that I give you and whatnot. But all of these events have been done in the past and will continue into the future. So the first thing I wanted to tell you about is the Great Westchase. Those of you that have been following the podcast for a while know that I'm a runner and I love doing 5K and sometimes 10K races. Well, the Great Westchase is a race here local to where I live in Westchase, which is in Tampa Bay, Florida. So if you are local to Tampa and you want to come out to a fun race and you want to get to run around and see the sights of Westchase, definitely register for that event. It is October 23rd of 2021. And the 10K starts at 7 a.m., the 5K starts at 8 a.m., and then there's a 1 miler for the kids that starts at 9 a.m. And you can find out more information at greatwestchase.wixsite.com. So greatwestchase.wixsite, WIXSITE.com. You can also find the Great Westchase on Facebook by going to facebook.com/The Great Westchase. Now, in the website name, the is not in there. In the Facebook page, the is in there. So if you want to check out the Great Westchase, if you want to see what it is, typically it's Halloween weekend every year. This year there was a conflict with Hillsborough County, so they had to move it back a week to October 23rd. Yesner Law is a sponsor. I'm still undecided if I'm going to be running in that race or not because I've got a little bit of a bum knee and I want to give it some time to heal. So I may or may not be running in the race or walking in the race, but I will definitely be there with a booth as a sponsor. So if you're local to the Tampa Bay area, you want to come out and talk to me, maybe I can arrange to bring my recording equipment. I don't know. We'll see. But come out and say hello if you are local to the Tampa Bay area. Definitely come out and check us out if you're local to Westchase. It is a fun time. It's a great event. Also on October 23rd, so as soon as the Great Westchase ends, I'll be driving about a mile down the road to the Westchase Golf Club. Most of you know, or for those of you that don't know, about a year and a half ago, I joined the Westchase crew of freebooters. That is the Westchase Gasparilla crew. So we've got the big float and we participate in the Gasparilla parades every year. Well, we didn't last year because of COVID, but we participate in the parades every year. And so we have a charity golf tournament every year at the Westchase Golf Club, at least for now. We've considered changing it, but we're the Westchase crew, and so we're going to support the Westchase Golf Club for now. The proceeds that we raise from this golf tournament benefit the Westchase Charitable Foundation, and they give the money to one or more needy families here in and around Westchase. So it's the Westchase Freebooters is the name of the crew. It's our annual golf tournament. You can find out more information at westchasecrew.com. So again, Westchase, and then crew is KREWE, westchasecrew.com. And if you click there, there's a tab at the top where you can click to sponsor the different events. If you have trouble finding it, just email me or call me or text me or whatever and let me know, and I can get you some more information about the golf tournament. But the golf tournament is a fantastic event. This is the second year in a row that Yesner Law has sponsored the golf tournament. and I'm proud and happy to be a part of the Westchase crew, the Freebooters crew, to do great things in and around and for the Westchase Charitable Foundation and here in Westchase. So you're welcome to come out. We still have, I think, one sponsorship available as of the time I'm recording this, and we've got plenty of room for golfers. So if you're a golfer and you're in and around the Tampa Bay area and you want to participate, let me know. I may actually have a foursome that I'm trying to fill where I could get you in to play. Otherwise, you're welcome to buy or purchase either a single ticket or a foursome or whatever. And we'll have the Montague out there at the golf course. That's our pirate ship that we use in the Gasparilla parades. So you'll get to see and tour the Gasparilla float. Yesner Law is the beer sponsor and the drink sponsor, so we'll have plenty of adult and non-adult beverages there at the golf course, sponsored by Yesner Law. We've got a bunch of swag to give away that I'll also be giving away at the race earlier in the day. Going to be kind of a busy day for me. I've got to be out there at the race probably around 6 a.m. in the morning, and the golf tournament probably won't wrap up until about 6 or 7 at night. So busy day for Yesner Law, but happy and proud to support my home neighborhood here of Westchase on October 23rd. Definitely come out and see us. The last thing I wanted to talk about is something really close to the podcast and really close to what I do here as part of the podcast. You've heard me talk about in earlier episodes Podfest. And Podfest was actually one of the last, if not the last, live event before COVID hit and really shut the world down in March of 2020. Podfest was live in March of 2020, and then as we were leaving Podfest, the NBA was shutting down, the NHL was shutting down, the various locations, the various conference centers were shutting down, everything was shutting down. So we were the last, if not one of the last events to go live in 2020 before COVID. Now, Chris Kremitzos, who founded Podfest and who runs Podfest every year, has gone virtual, and Podfest has had a couple of virtual events since COVID hit. However, not only is Podfest coming back live, but Podfest is coming back to Tampa. It started here in Tampa. We then moved it over to Orlando, but Podfest is coming back to Tampa. And so what we're going to do, what Chris is going to do, is he's going to have 2 different virtual sessions. One is going to be October 28 and 29. That's virtual session number 1. Virtual session number 2 is going to be November 1 through November 3. That's virtual session number 2. And then Podfest is going to be live in Tampa at Amalie Arena, host of your 2-time world champion Tampa Bay Lightning, actually 3-time, although twice in a row, world champion Tampa Bay Lightning there at Amalie Arena, and that's going to be November 4 and 5. So if you want to visit Tampa, if you have a podcast, if you want to learn about podcasting, if you want to be a guest, if you want to get more guests, if you want to learn how to monetize your show, definitely check out Podfest, either one of the 2 virtual sessions or both, and definitely the live session November 4 and 5 here in Tampa. I will be there. I've submitted my speaker submission, so hopefully they'll allow me to speak at Podfest. And if they do, I'll update you on what I'm going to be speaking about. But definitely, if you have a podcast, if you're interested in podcasting, if you have a YouTube channel, if you want to grow your YouTube channel, TikTok, social media, whatever, definitely check out Podfest. Definitely come here down in Tampa. Now, tickets are limited. Seats are limited. Even though it's a live event, we're going to limit the number of people that can go because of social distancing and COVID and all that as well. But definitely come on down and check it out. Hang out with me for a couple of days. I don't believe I'm going to be staying at the hotel because I'm here local, but I'll definitely be there on November 4 and 5 all day, and I can definitely hang out and do lunches and dinners and those types of things. Plus, hopefully, again, I'll be speaking. You can find out more information about Podfest at podfestexpo.com. The website is podfestexpo.com. And again, don't worry about trying to write any of these things down. I will put them all in the notes. And so if you want to learn, if you want to find the websites, just go wherever you listen to your podcast, go to the summary of the podcast in whatever app or website or whatever. And all these links will be there so you can follow the links and register for whatever you want to register for. The last thing I want to mention is something I mention every show because he is a huge, huge supporter of the show, and that's our friend Sam Cohen. Now, when I say he's a huge supporter, he is our sponsor. And so that means he does pay me a little bit of money for me to talk about him and his company here on every episode. And so I would love for you as a listener to support Sam Cohen and Attorneys First Insurance by introducing them to an attorney or a title company either in Texas or Florida or really anywhere that needs a quote on their malpractice insurance or professional liability insurance, also called E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance. Sam is a great friend of the show. He's a great agent. I've used him as my agent for years. What I love about Sam is that he gives you an apples-to-apples comparison. So he's not just going to give you a quote and try to win your business. If he can't save you some money on your errors and omissions insurance, on your professional liability insurance, he will be honest and tell you that. If he can save you some money, he will be honest and tell you that as well. So a great way to support the show is to support our sponsor, so he will keep paying us so that we can keep bringing these episodes to you. And the best way to do that is to introduce him to an attorney or title company in Florida, in Texas, or really anywhere in the country at sam@attorneysfirst.com or www.attorneysfirst.com. So, thank you for bearing with me through all of that. I really try to get right to the topic that I want to talk about, but I did also want to tell you a little bit about what's going on with Yesner Law and the Crushing Debt podcast here in the coming months. But let me get to the topic. Get off my lawn. I've been getting a lot of questions. I've been getting a lot of inquiries from clients, potential customers. Someone's on the title to their property and they want that person off. Now, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a family member, a son, a daughter, a brother, a nephew, a niece, whether it's a friend, whoever it is, somebody gets added to the title to property, something sours, and the person that owned the property previous wants that person off. How do we do it? Well, the first thing we need to look at is the person you want to take off of the title to your house a spouse or not? If they're a spouse, then this is probably a family law issue and one that needs to be handled in family law court. Now, what I recently learned, because I don't practice family law, what I recently learned is that it does matter if the person was added to title pre-marriage or post-marriage. If they were added pre-marriage, the house may not be a marital asset. The house may not be something the family law court can deal with. So in a situation like that, if you're going to add someone to the title to your house in anticipation of getting married, you may want to get a prenuptial agreement so that if later you get a divorce, there's already an agreement in place as to what happens to the house. If that person gets added after the marriage, then it's probably a marital asset. The prenuptial agreement is probably not needed for the house, although there are plenty of other reasons to get a prenuptial agreement. But in that scenario, I would still consult with a family law attorney, even maybe before you add the person to title. Don't consult with me as a real estate attorney. Consult with a family law attorney and find out what you can do to protect yourself in the event the relationship later sours. This may be something that can be handled within the divorce, within the family law court, and so it would not be anything that I would necessarily handle in any capacity. Now, there are two other ways, potentially, to get someone off the title to your house. One is called a quiet title lawsuit. And basically, the function of a quiet title lawsuit is to have the court make a determination that your title in the property is valid, is superior to all other titles to the property. Now, you all know what a quiet title lawsuit is. I mean, to a certain extent, a foreclosure is a quiet title lawsuit, although it's a foreclosure lawsuit. But again, the purpose of a foreclosure is for the bank to have the judge make a determination that their title in the property is superior to everybody else's title to the property. Another time you've heard of quiet title lawsuits is in the situation of a tax deed sale. A lot of times investors will hire me to file a quiet title lawsuit on behalf of the person that bought at the tax deed sale. And again, the purpose there is to make a determination that the buyer's title through the tax deed is superior to everybody else's claim to the property. Now, the problem with a quiet title is that there needs to be some document or some error or some question within the chain of title. So, for example, if there's something about a tax deed sale or something about a probate or a deed that conveys title away, a deed where somebody says, I'm giving my title in the property to blank, and then they later come in and they make a claim that they really own the property. There needs to be something there. If you added your friend or your brother or your sibling or your son or your mom or whoever, if you added someone to title and then you later, years later, change your mind, or months later or days later, change your mind and you want to take that person off of title, a quiet title is not going to get you there, because the judge is basically going to say, hey, you added this person with a deed. You can't now come back and say you want to take that person off of title. That person, whoever it is, sibling, family member, friend, whoever, would have to agree to come off title in a situation like that. So you may be forced to be in a situation where you pay that person off to give you the title back to the property. So a quiet title is not really the way to take someone off the property if you voluntarily added them. A quiet title may be an option in the situation where the person who was added to title maybe was added improperly, or maybe subsequently voluntarily conveyed away their interest in the property. But a quiet title lawsuit is not really the way to take somebody off of the title to the property. So that leaves us with the last option, and that's a partition option. Now, I've talked about partition on the Crushing Debt podcast before, and it doesn't look like I've ever really dedicated an entire episode to partition, but I have talked about it before on the show. Now, partition is governed under Florida statutes. It's Chapter 64. For those of you that are citation geeks like me, and you want to go look up the Florida statutory authority for partition, it's Chapter 64. But basically what a partition is two people own property and they can't agree on what to do with it. One person wants to stay there maybe, the other person wants to sell it. A lot of times this happens in connection with an inheritance. So mom and dad die and they leave the property to siblings, two or more siblings. One of the siblings lives in the house and says, great, I get to live here for free. It's my inheritance. Mom and dad paid off the house. I don't have to worry about rent. I don't have to worry about mortgages. All I got to worry about is paying taxes and insurance every year. The other sibling says, well, wait a minute, I'm not living there and I'd love to cash in my inheritance and I'd love to get the money. I miss mom and dad terribly, but I would love to get the money and move on with my life. And sibling, you can do whatever you want as well. And so they disagree on what to do with the property. So this partition lawsuit is filed. Now, typically the judges will grant the partition. Basically what the judges do is, this is not a sitcom where we can take a piece of tape and put it down the center of the living room and you get this half of the house and I get that half of the house. It doesn't work that way. It as a practical matter, can't work that way. So typically the judge will say, okay, let's split the baby. Let's sell the house. And where the real fight comes in is then the owners argue over, the law assumes if it's two owners, it's a 50-50 split. If it's three owners, it's 1/3 each. Four owners, 25% each, whatever. The law assumes that that's where we start. And then one owner will say, well, I paid all the taxes and insurance, so the needle should move more than 50% in my direction. And the other owner says, well, you could have been renting it out this whole time and you didn't, so I would have been entitled to rental income, so the needle should move a little bit more in my direction. And each side argues why the needle should go more in their direction, and eventually the court will decide, okay, it's two owners, but I'm going to make you split the proceeds 60-40, 70-30, 50-50, whatever, 55-45, whatever the number may be. The house sells, and then the parties split the proceeds, however the court determines. Now, one other thing that could happen is the sibling that wants to stay there could approach the court and say, hey, instead of forcing me out of this home where I've been living, forcing me out of mom and dad's home, why don't I just buy out my sibling or the other owner or the other owners? And they would take out a loan if they can, maybe a hard money loan, maybe a conventional loan, whatever, and they would pay off. So if it's a $200,000 house and there's two owners, maybe we negotiate where the one sibling is going to get $100,000 and the other sibling gets to keep the house, something like that. So partition lawsuits are really good, and they can work, and they can get someone off the title to your house, but it's also a big bluff because you could lose your house by filing a partition lawsuit. And so it's really something you want to think about carefully. It's really something you want to discuss with your attorney. Now, a lot of times, the family law court, if this is a husband and wife situation, the family law court can also institute a partition lawsuit within the divorce proceedings and make a determination that way. But typically where I get involved in partition lawsuits is, the friend was added to title, some non-spouse family member was added to title, the property was inherited, whatever. That's typically where I get involved in the partition lawsuit. And so those are the three ways that you can get somebody off the title to your house, and I guess maybe buried in there is a fourth way. But the first way is you either deal with it in family law court, maybe you get a prenuptial or a postnuptial agreement, or you deal with it within the family law court. Number two, you can file a quiet title lawsuit, but that doesn't necessarily work in every scenario. Number three, you can file a partition lawsuit, although there's some dangers there in terms of, whether you lose the house or not, or potentially could lose the house or not. And then the fourth way, sort of buried in today's episode, is you negotiate with the other party and you say, look, if I pay you X, will you give me the title? Will you sign over your half of the title to me? Or will you sign over your third of the title to me and the other one, something like that. So sort of buried in there is way number four. You negotiate with the other side. You talk to the other side. So I think that'll pretty much do it for this week's episode. I do want to remind you, like I did at the beginning of the episode, you want to see Yesner Law, you want to come out and meet me, you want to talk to me. I'll be out and about here in Westchase on October 23rd in the morning at the Great Westchase, in the afternoon at the Freebooters Gasparilla Crew Golf Tournament. I'll also be at Podfest Live, Podfest Origins Tampa Live, which is going to be November 4 and 5. You can find all the websites earlier in the episode or in the notes if you want to catch up with me at any of those events. I love talking to listeners. I love meeting listeners and fans of the show. It's one of the things that I probably enjoy most about doing this show. So that'll do it for this week's episode. Again, I really appreciate all of your support. I really appreciate all of you listening. I hope that at the end of the month you have more money, rather than at the end of the money you have more month. That'll do it for this week's episode, and I look forward to talking to you in next week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Sean or connect with us on social media. Sean Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.